are shelves and shelves of literature on the people who came in ships from different parts of the world, including Indians who came from India to Guyana.
Yes.
Right. Welcome to another adventure in Guyanese literature, and welcome again to oral tradition. Now with us is someone who is a phenomenal woman. Yes, indeed, a phenomenal woman. And she's bearing gift, Christmas gift, in form of a book, The Return of Latchmini. Now, I open by saying there are lots of literature on the people who came.
Yes.
They came and they moved like into the diaspora. But there are few, in fact, I don't think there are any books that talk about the return and another return. So why did you pick up such a challenging area to work with?
Actually, it's a maternal family tradition to pass on stories from generation to generation. Mm-hmm. This is, in fact, creative nonfiction. It's a true story. Latchmini is my great-grandmother.
Right.
My great-grandmother. And my grandmother started the research on the Suriname end. She was a phenomenal woman. My mother took the mantle up. She went to India. Before she went to India, she went to Suriname, she went to Netherlands, she went to the UK, and after she had exhausted the resources in Guyana, from the archives to GPO records, to find out if the stories, actually, it was to verify these old stories that passed on from generation to generation.
Yes, we hear the stories.
Yes,
right.
But she wanted to verify our own maternal history, our oral history, and to prove that what my grandmother was saying to her, that was her mother, was correct. And so she's the one who started it. She actually, after about 10 trips to India, she was finally able to find a village from which my great-grandmother Latchmini left.
You talk about creative nonfiction, and this is also creative nonfiction. Kudi Woman by Gayaltra Bahadur. And this also talks about one part of the journey. In Guyana, the sacrifices, the struggle of women in the cane, the sugar plantation.
The difference with Latchmini, the return of Latchmini, right, is that it goes into it's written as historical fiction. It goes into the life and experiences of Latchmini, right? It's a novel as against an academic text or an academic collection of papers. It starts, when you read it from the beginning, you go into the life and thoughts of Latchmini. She's the main character. She is the protagonist. It is only when you're finished with the actual novel, in the appendices and in the addendum, do you find the actual, like the ship's records. You find the ship's records there. You find the different scholarly reports in an annotated bibliography. And then you find the actual story, the actual real information with the Demerara Depot in Calcutta and photographs, etc. And there's also a glossary. So those are the things that make it nonfiction. But the creative part is the novel.
The text.
That is based, the actual novel, that is based on real situation, real characters, and even the characters surrounding the primary family were composites of real characters.
Take us on that journey now. Latchmini, first trip over the Kalapani.
Well, her first trip over the Kalapani was not quite known because that would have been in the 1880s. It was the second trip, the return from Suriname.
There was no letters and things like that to go by.
No, but this, the stories.
Okay.
Okay, so she got married in one village close to the Sangam where the three rivers meet, right? And so she moved from her village to her husband's village, which was Gamkuri. And it was, of course, famine, and nobody was getting work, and so every day they would go out to try to get work, and no work, and eventually she and her husband took the ship to Sri Ram land.
Which is?
Suriname.
Suriname, okay.
Yes. They spent 2 contracts there.
You just alluded to some of the factors that pushed, that push factor to move away from India. Was there, that's an official one, was there a real reason for?
That's the real reason,
That's the
actually.
real reason.
They wanted to go to make money. They couldn't, they didn't, first of all, they were in their, she was in her father-in-law's home. And the husband, they were both educated. Allahabad had universities and all that, but she was educated in a village school that was run by Christians. And so she could speak English, she could write English, and her husband was educated too because his father was. See, this is Allahabad, and this was close to the Sangam.
Now, this, you said they were educated.
When I say educated, at the primary level.
Right.
At she went up to when she was like about 14 years old, actually. And he further, because his father used to read and all of that. So he grew up with not his mom, but his dad being educated to that point, and an avid reader. So Madari is the husband. He got left in Suriname. And Latchmini herself, if it wasn't the fact that she was supposed to get married and all of that, as tradition, she may have gone on because her idols were Indian female writers who were coming out at that time.
Nice. I think we should touch on that for a little while. Some of the names of the Indian writers.
Well, the thing is, the names would elude me at the moment.
Okay, great.
Right? But there were quite a few Indian writers that were more Indian female writers. I mean, Indian writers were there for centuries.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the female writers.
Wow.
And this may have been a second surge because I can't say they weren't female writers long before. History is unveiling. Archaeology is revealing so many things.
Right.
Yes, that
right.
that we may have taken for granted in the opposite way. Right? But what I discovered is that not only were some of these villages in Allahabad have missionary schools where the children had to attend, almost compulsory, but her parents, she was the only child, and they wanted her to have the very best. And the boys were allowed to go further in their education, but the girls, there was marriage. And so she was promised to Madari from another village.
A troubling thing is that information is passed down, whether they are factual or not, that many who came were forced, who were perhaps captured by the Kati and things like that, and forced to come down here. Your story, or Latchmini's story, is different.
Yes, that did happen. There were people who were kidnapped. There were people who were fooled that they were going to sift sugar. Well, actually, Latchmini and Madari thought they were going to sift sugar.
Chile, Charlie.
Right. And they thought basically it was not so far away. They didn't realize it was across 3 oceans. And but after having found out that it was true, and having gone back to Yamkuri, right, she didn't think twice. To pick up her children, she traveled from Suriname with 2 children. And when things didn't work out the way she intended, and I'm not going to give you any more because that's a story, she left in the middle of the night, walked along the train line.
In Suriname?
In India, in Jamkuri.
Okay.
In India, her husband took her to the boat and everything. She left her eldest son in Suriname, Ram. She left Ram and Madari in Suriname.
She had already crossed again.
She had crossed the first time.
Yes.
Yes, and then she left Suriname.
Yeah, I just want to get
and
that.
returned to India. And the village was Jamkuri. And in Jamkuri, things didn't work out quite as she intended. Well, the father-in-law didn't quite believe that. And the newspapers at the time, the stories that were coming out is that it was questioning the morality of the women in the West Indies. The women, the Indian women on the plantations, and the morality was being questioned.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about her little girl, she returned to India with a boy, 8-year-old boy, and a daughter who was almost 2 years old. And her own mother, Lakshmini's mother, was pretty fair-skinned, light-colored hair. So, but Madari and his family were very dark. But this little girl had light-colored hair and her skin was very light. So the father-in-law did not believe that a woman should travel on a ship by herself. So one, she got to be morally loose. She had to have changed. And look at the child. Supposing that's a white man's child. Things did not work out in India. They had intended to go back to India when they had enough money. They didn't quite have enough money, so the husband stayed back with the eldest son, right? And he was just 10 plus. He was just over 10, just around 10 years old, because there was 2 contracts they had.
Okay, fine. They were just coming to that. They were on contract.
2 5-year contracts.
2 5-year contract. And they were entitled to what?
Return passage.
Return passage.
Yes, that was all they were entitled to at that time.
Okay. So, okay. If they were entitled, why? Well, the husband stayed back.
To work another contract. For the son to work another contract. Their idea was to go back to India, to Jamkuri, the village, and have their own resources, make their own little house and live apart from the father and mother. Right? It was big land, but they wanted to.
Right.
And all this was confirmed by my mom, Banmati. She went back to the same village. Yes.
Right. I'm coming to that. So you had some help putting the book together.
Oh, yes. I had some help with the research.
The help with the research.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is the product of a research project. See, there are a number of products of the research project. The novel is the main one, the first one. There's a research report. A summary is in the book at the back.
Right.
But the research report will be published later. Well, in a few months. It's a comprehensive academic research report.
Extraordinary women in your life, in your family.